Dressed as a man, I rescued Xiao Qian from the pile of corpses. At the victory banquet, His Majesty asked what reward he desired. To marry the princess, he thrust his sword through my binding corset, exposing my true gender before all. This woman deceived the sovereign and betrayed the court. By marrying the princess to the frontier, she atones for her crime through service. I was imprisoned in the dungeon, chains piercing my scapula. The princess smiled as she crushed my finger bones, releasing rats to gnaw at my flesh. After all, it was you who saved Xiao Lang, thus bringing about our blessed union. This is my gracious reward for your service. The following spring, Xiao Qian married the princess, his power soaring to dominate the court. I endured every humiliation, dying a miserable death in a sheep pen beyond the frontier. Reborn, I returned to the day Xiao Qian exposed me. Main text: on the day Xiao Qian married the princess, spring grasses were fresh and green. 10 miles of the capital city were adorned in red, the spectacle grand and imposing. Yet I, clad in rags, covered in wounds, chained by iron shackles, left a trail of blood with every step. The Song dynasty and Jin dynasty negotiated peace. The Jin returned one city in exchange for a Song princess in marriage. By imperial decree, I was ordered to escort the princess to the frontier. Uncomprehending citizens pointed and whispered. Some showed pity, others scorn. The spring chill was biting. Clad only in a thin robe, I shivered until my skin turned blue. The Jin leader who met us was missing an eye. I recognized him, Wanyan Lai, the commander at Whitehead Cliff. At 17, I was promoted to deputy general under Xiao Qian. During the Whitehead Cliff campaign, the imperial main force was ambushed. General Xiao Qian vanished. Alone, I dug Xiao Qian, covered in blood, from the mass of corpses, my fingers dripping with his blood. I carried him through the snowy mountains all night. When the Song reinforcements arrived, frost clung to my temples, and I was near unconsciousness from the cold. Back then, to save Xiao Qian, I shot an arrow that pierced Wanyan Lai's left eye. He wanted nothing more than to devour my flesh and blood. Now, barely 3 years later, I've fallen into the hands of my enemy. Wanyan Lai's lustful gaze roamed over my face. He yanked me into his embrace and roared with laughter. So Deputy Commander Shui is actually a woman. Can't sleep with your golden branch, jade leaf princess? Sleeping with you seems pretty good too. He pulled out an arrow feather and traced the outline of my eye socket like a cat toying with a mouse. I hear you were officially identified in the Imperial Hall. Doesn't that mean many men have seen your body? Song women value their virtue above all. A woman like you must be called. He bit my ear suggestively, his wet tongue lapping my earlobe as he ground out the 2 words between his teeth. Whore. The words barely left his mouth before the golden hairpin in my hand shot toward his throat. In the blink of an eye, it came within an inch of taking his life. But my finger bones had shattered before the strike, robbing me of my aim. Wanyan Lai flung me aside. His furious feet rained kicks upon my body. Blood gushed from my nose and mouth. He twisted my arm, snapping it with brutal force. Agony made me scream. Wasn't you the unmatched marksman, the finest spearman in the army? Now you're nothing but a cripple. Let's see how tough your bones really are. He ordered me locked in the sheep pen. Tonight, I was a lamb awaiting slaughter. Countless eerie green eyes, like lurking beasts, stared hungrily at my skin beneath my clothes. Deep winter, heavy snow falling. I slammed my head against a stone block inside the pen. A sharp crack, the sound of skull shattering. Red and white blurred before my eyes. Countless waves of hatred seared me. As death approached, memories flashed before my eyes like a kaleidoscope. That year, fleeing through the snowy mountains, I saved Xiao Qian. The snow was just as heavy then. Xiao Qian and I huddled together for warmth in the icy wilderness. Thirsty and exhausted, I was about to lose consciousness. He, barely clinging to life, used his last strength to slit his wrist. He fed the warm blood into my mouth. Every detail remains vivid. Yet these memories only make me despise him more. Xiao Qian, nothing but a bastard. The agony of death still lingers. I opened my eyes. Majestic palace walls, golden halls, jade steps. I had returned to the day of the victory banquet. Raging fury made me clench the jade pendant in my hand. The very one Xiao Qian had given me. My fingers dug into my palm until blood spilled. I had returned to the beginning of all misfortune. At 17, I saved Xiao Qian. While I lay unconscious, he discovered I was a woman. When I awoke, his face pale, he fed me medicine from his own lips. Candlelight flickered within the tent, reflecting the smile in his eyes. Who would have thought the valiant Deputy Commander Shui was actually a girl? He never exposed me. For 3 years, we fought side by side through mountains of blades and seas of blood. Later, before returning to the capital, he promised me his life and offered to give me the jade pendant. My cheeks flushed crimson. I only said that as long as the Jin people remained unconquered, I had no heart for romantic entanglements. He smiled and pressed the jade pendant into my hand, leaving no room for refusal. Yet in the blink of an eye, his countenance shifted entirely within the imperial hall. In that hall of the previous life, His Majesty asked Xiao Qian what reward he desired. He suddenly knelt and bowed his head, petitioning to marry the princess. But the princess was soon to depart for a marriage alliance beyond the frontier. The court erupted in shock. It was then he drew his sword, severing my hairpin. With that blade I had stroked countless times, he sliced open my binding corset. 2 years prior, a Song minister's young daughter had eaten a pastry offered by a stable hand, only to be starved to death by her own father. Xiao Qian's actions now condemned me to eternal ruin. I tried to resist, but the princess had drugged my wine beforehand. My long hair fell loose, my clothes barely covering my body. Dressed as a man, I clutched my years-long secret in terror as it was laid bare before all. Xiao Qian's sword tip pierced half an inch into my throat. Blood gushed forth in torrents. I could no longer speak, unable to defend myself. Xiao Qian knelt before me. This person disguised as a man, deceiving the sovereign, deserves death. Now, by marrying the princess to the frontier, she may atone for her crime. The crowd's leering gazes swept over me. Beyond the screen, the women's quarters were filled with contempt. A woman infiltrating the military camp, shameless, vile, and disgusting. An official scrutinized my tattered garments, chuckling maliciously. She appears coarse and frail at first glance, yet her skin is surprisingly soft and fair, though those scars are hideous. The battle-scarred wounds, forged in blood in combat, became the subject of mockery and gossip. I abandoned silk robes for armor. The dynasty I defended with blood and sweat now thrust blades at me. The princess at the head of the table parted the curtain, revealing a face of unparalleled beauty, her expression coyly charming. After all, you are an old acquaintance of the Jin people. Compared to this palace, Miss Shui will surely win the Jin people's favor more easily. Xiao Qian bowed his head once more. For a commoner to be offered in marriage with princess's honors is no dishonor to her. The drowsy emperor lifted his eyelids. He gave me a cold, appraising look. Then, with casual ease, he decided the fate of an ant like me. I should have been remembered in history, yet I became the sacrificial pawn in the princess's marriage. Looking back now, all those clashes of steel, the flashes of blades and spears, all seem like a joke now. My thoughts snapped back to the present. At 20, I sat in the palace hall, before the turning point. My fingers dug into the palms of my hands, leaving bloody marks. I fought to keep myself calm. Xiao Qian, seated beside me, keenly sensed my stiffness and turned his head with concern. Xiao, are you feeling unwell? My hands trembled inside my sleeves as I forced a smile through gritted teeth. I'm fine. Just a bit tired. From a distant corner, a pair of eyes like venomous snakes fixed upon me. Hiding my bleeding hand within my sleeve, I lifted my gaze to meet that stunningly beautiful face. A face as radiant as a peony, yet a heart as venomous as a scorpion. I recalled how, in my previous life, upon hearing the princess would soon depart for the frontier, I had told Xiao Qian, a princess of royal blood should never suffer humiliation at the hands of the Jin. I, your servant, am willing to fight. Both the city and the princess can be protected. I had even drawn a small portrait of the princess, inscribing words of comfort upon it. Ironically, the one who ended up crossing the frontier was me. I slowly turned my face away, shifting my gaze. I saw clearly the hand of the maid serving wine beside me trembling slightly. That wine vessel was prepared especially for me, laced with something. All to make me their plaything. While Xiao Qian and the princess exchanged secret glances, my fingers moved swiftly, swapping our cups. I watched him silently, just as I had in my past life. Rising, I knelt in the hall and bowed my head, pleading to marry the princess. Amidst the gathered guests, I sneered coldly, gripping the long sword at my waist. This time, when Xiao Qian's sword tip tore open my robe, I drew my blade and leapt forward. Sword flowers flew like snow, shock flashed in his eyes. I longed to execute him on the spot, to cut him into 1,000 pieces. The drugged wine made Xiao Qian's steps unsteady. My sword danced through countless exchanges, each strike ruthless, drawing thunderous applause from the hall. Moments later, I slammed his sword to the ground. My blade sliced half an inch into his throat. Hatred nearly overwhelmed me, threatening to make me slay him then and there. Blood dripped drop by drop from the sword's tip onto the floor. Xiao Qian clutched his throat in disbelief, blood seeping through his fingers. This time, the one unable to speak was no longer me. I knelt before him, loosened my hair, and cried out loudly. This servant emulated Mulan by taking her father's place in the army, committing the unforgivable crime of deceiving the sovereign. But today, I will risk my life to accuse Xiao Qian of empty bravado, reckless ambition, and unfitness to command the Song army. The princess rose, her eyes wide with disbelief. Wretch! What nonsense do you spout? Realizing her outburst, she swallowed the insults to avoid suspicion. I flashed a careless, defiant smile. And furthermore, for corrupting the imperial harem, a crime deserving of death. The princess clenched her garment's hem so tightly she nearly snapped the armor, her eyes blazing with venom. I recalled my past life, collapsing in the golden hall before being dragged straight to the dungeon. My meridians destroyed, chains piercing my scapula, agony so intense it felt unbearable. Xiao Qian arrived with the princess. She drew a dagger, holding it to the candlelight to scrutinize my face. Truly the face of a seductress. She threw her arms around Xiao Qian's neck, giggling. Xiao Lang, you've known her for 6 years. Never once did your heart stir? Xiao Qian smiled, tightening his embrace. Never. She was nothing but a tool to me. That year, on horseback. As we fought side by side, when the crimson-plumed spear pierced the enemy's heart, he looked back at me with a smile, the same look. Then he said, Miss Xue possesses extraordinary talent. To have your aid is my good fortune. Rage nearly turned to blood, tears streaming from my eyes. But my throat was destroyed, I couldn't even utter curses. The princess laughed loudly, thrusting a dagger red-hot from the candle flame into my fingernail bed and wrenching it upward with brutal force. Agony ripped a scream from my throat. I bit through my lip, my mouth filling with blood. Xiao Qian took 2 steps forward. The princess shot him a sidelong glance. Feeling sorry for her? He averted his gaze, offering a faint smile. If she can bring your highness joy, it is her good fortune. The princess then picked up a pair of pincers and crushed my fingers with a smile. The thought of these hands touching Xiao Lang makes me sick. My body felt as though it had been pulled from water, drenched in cold sweat. With a light clap of her hands, jailers brought forward a cage. Inside were several plump, fat rats. The starving rodents burrowed into my clothing. The princess ordered my sleeves and collar bound tight, leaving them free to gnaw at my flesh. I let out a piercing, beast-like howl. The princess watched my agony with a faint, amused smile. After all, it was you who saved Xiao Lang, bringing about our blessed union. I am a benevolent sovereign. This is your reward. I lost consciousness. The princess summoned the imperial physician. Keep her alive. She must not die. Bright red rouge scraped across my eyelids. She laughed coldly. I hear the Jin warriors are exceptionally fierce. Deputy General Xue, you shall enjoy her thoroughly for me. These words would haunt me forever. The emperor's hand, propping up his chin, dropped. His dark, piercing eyes locked onto me. Deputy General Xue, do you know what you're saying? The potion took effect. Xiao Qian beside me clutched his throat and collapsed to the ground, unconscious, like a dead dog. I lowered my eyes and raised my voice. Your Majesty, every word I spoke just now is true. Had I not been reborn, I would never have known that every victory I claimed these past 3 years was ultimately recorded in history as Xiao Qian's achievement. What he stole from me in my past life, he must now return to me. I bowed deeply with sincere devotion. His earlier provocation before your Majesty was merely to conceal his crimes. Xiao Qian's pursuit of the princess, his clandestine alliance between the imperial court and the harem, was already a grave offense. In my past life, Xiao Qian held military power, cutting off His Majesty's escape route and making me the sacrificial pawn. Sovereigns are often suspicious. How could they tolerate others snoring beside their bed? Today I wagered on His Majesty's own suspicion to draw him to my side. The entire hall fell silent. The princess's supporters pointed at me, cursing viciously. Nonsense. You're just a woman, what right do you have? I turned, my eyes blazing with murderous intent, advancing step by step toward him. What do I have? At 17, I single-handedly rescued Xiao Qian from Whitehead Cliff. At 18, I burned their provisions and forced back 20,000 Jin troops. At 19, I captured their commander alive in Zhang River Valley. Surely not by relying on this humble servant's head, would you rather trust that blockhead? His face flushed crimson, his tongue tied, speechless. The hall fell silent enough to hear a pin drop. Many held their breath involuntarily. In my past life, Xiao Qian betrayed me solely to claim glory and fame for himself. Just now, he provoked me first, then fell at my hands. All witnessed it, this is fact. Charging him with high treason would surely please the emperor. His Majesty dispatched palace attendants to escort me away for examination. Upon my return, guards had already dragged the fainted Xiao Qian away. I stepped forward, knelt before the stone steps, and banged my head against them with a resounding thud. Your Majesty, regarding the marriage alliance, a princess of royal blood should not suffer humiliation at the hands of the Jin. I beg to atone through service. Grant me command to fight again, and both the city and the princess shall be preserved. Within 3 years, the Jin shall be utterly vanquished. The princess's eyes widened as if she'd heard something horrifying. Her face turned deathly pale, her breathing quickened. I curved my lips slightly. The painting and inscription Xiao Qian stole from me, along with these very words. All transformed into sweet nothings, weaving a trap of passion for the princess. Then exploiting a woman's jealousy to cast me into eternal ruin. Stealing all my achievements. So, princess. Speaking from my lips the very words of your lover. Are you surprised? The art of imperial governance lies in maintaining balance. Xiao Qian holds military power, the princess, royal blood. Their marriage, no wonder the emperor of the past could not eat or sleep in peace. Now, I have forcibly carved out a path. His Majesty remained silent. I crawled forward 2 steps. I pledge a 3-year term. I will sign a military contract. Should I break my word, I shall offer my head. I added another bundle of firewood, determined to ignite the flames. After my death in the past, the court had no one left who could be relied upon. Xiao Qian's military strategy is shallow, and the princess is stubborn and self-willed. They will surely be no match for the Jin. Today, the cold is biting, the grass withered, and the water frozen. The great Jin's treasury is depleted, peace talks are merely a temporary expedient. After a few years of respite, the great Song will surely face an even fiercer counterattack. The princess's face turned ashen. She tried to speak further but was forced back by the emperor's single glance. The officials began arguing heatedly. When the fate of the nation hung in the balance, the court and the realm saw only me as fit for the task. No one cared whether I was male or female. The veteran minister Zhang stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with me. The old man with his gray beard and white hair had tears welling in his eyes. Your Majesty, the 6 northern states of Ji have been lost for nearly 30 years. Now that the Jin have been driven from the central plains, this is the opportune moment to reclaim our lost territories. It is what the people desire. Cold sweat nearly soaked through the clothes on my back. The emperor pondered for a long while before offering a faint smile. Minister Shui, I hope your head remains firmly attached to your neck 3 years from now. 3 days later, I personally visited Xiao Qian in the imperial prison. He was bound to the torture rack, his throat wound still oozing blood. I casually brushed aside the hem of my robe and smiled at him. It's been a few days, and you look rather worse for wear. His eyes glared at me as if they could devour me. I drew a dagger and pressed it against his handsome cheek. The blade drew a shallow, bleeding line across his skin. A hoarse growl escaped his throat. You dare inflict private punishment on me? I laughed softly. How could that be? My gaze turned fierce. The dagger in my hand didn't pause, carving strokes fiercely into his face. On the left, the character for vile. On the right, the character for person. After finishing, I stepped back 2 paces and studied this blood-soaked face. I praised it with great satisfaction. Much more pleasing to the eye now. In my past life, my tendons were severed. A cripple, I held no value to the dynasty beyond a political marriage. But now, I stand as the sole capable general in the court. And my utility far surpasses Xiao Qian's. What does it matter that I am a woman? His Majesty employs me for my worth. Dispersing Xiao Qian's military power, weakening the princess's faction, reclaiming lost territories from the Jin. 3 birds with 1 stone. This blade of mine, utterly beneficial, not a single drawback. Perfectly useful. Since he's a trusted and beloved general, letting me vent a little frustration is quite satisfying, isn't it? Xiao Qian's face was frozen in disbelief. Xiaorong, when did you become so ruthless? I pressed my finger into his wound, applying slight pressure. Blood gushed forth, drawing a pained groan from him. Xiao Qian, you've misaddressed me. From now on, you shall call me General Shui. He struggled, rattling the chains clanking loudly. How dare you treat me this way? I retreated to a chair, sat down, propped my chin, and examined the blood-dripping dagger in my hand, watching him with leisurely composure. Did the princess enjoy the painting and inscription you stole from me? Xiao Qian's gaze froze for a moment before turning to me with heart-wrenching despair. I had my reasons. My courtship of the princess was merely a charade. Sunlight seeped into the gloomy dungeon, illuminating the doorframe and revealing tiny specks of dust. At some point, a pair of embroidered shoes had appeared there. Peonies woven in shoe brocade, proclaiming the owner's regal splendor. The princess stood there silently. I looked over, expressionless. Such words, I had heard them in my past life too. The imperial edict, bright yellow, was clutched in the princess's palm. They said she had knelt outside the imperial study for 3 days to beg for it. His Majesty decrees, Xiao Qian shall atone through service, demoted 3 ranks to serve under my command. I anticipated His Majesty would not swiftly take Xiao Qian's worthless life. Thus I came early to brand his face, hardly excessive, is it? The princess stared at Xiao Qian's blood-soaked face. Even in her fury, a flicker of pity flickered in her eyes. Behind her, a maid held the finest healing ointment. Seeing the princess's grim expression, she hesitated, unsure if she should approach. Pity. The man's misfortune must span 800 lifetimes. I felt utterly disinterested and turned to leave. The prey must die slowly through torment, only then can it repay the suffering I endured in my past life. The relationship between the two gradually fractured. Like flawless jade developing a tiny crack. Time is on my side, I have all the patience in the world. His Majesty bestowed upon me a general's mansion. No sooner had I settled into the residence than the gatekeeper announced someone outside refusing to leave. Mother stood outside with my elder brother, craning their necks to peer inside the mansion, their eyes gleaming with sharpness. Hatred slowly crept into my own eyes. My brother and I were twins. Years ago, our father died in battle, leaving a legacy to inherit. My brother was frail from birth, so mother disguised me as a boy to take his place at the frontier. As I departed, the air was thick with my parents' heartbroken sobs for their son. Mother shed not a single tear, her gaze fixed on me with fierce determination. If not for you, my eldest would have been a healthy child. Don't blame me for being heartless. You took his destiny, this is your repayment. Through 6 bitter, cold years at the frontier, she never once wrote me a letter. Only when I returned victorious did she come begging, hands trembling, for a minor official post for my brother. I refused with excuses, instead giving them a large sum of silver. Then, in my past life, as I was escorted out of the frontier covered in blood, I saw Mother among the villagers along the road, supporting my brother. My voice destroyed, I endured excruciating pain and cried out, "Mother." My brother heard me, his eyes wide with shock. He pointed at me, his fingertips trembling. Mother turned her face away. My brother tugged at her sleeve, urging her to look. Mother silenced him. "Stranger, don't make false claims." My footsteps halted, earning me a lash across the back from the guard, tearing open my flesh. Mother watched me, her eyes cold and distant. That year, the people of the capital saw me weeping in the streets, as if possessed. Yet none knew why my tears fell. Mother's heart was always biased, drinking my blood to warm her own and her son's. Just as now, with me clad in brocade robes and jade sash, she scrutinized me from head to toe, her eyes brimming with calculation. "My son, you've truly come into great fortune now." I gently withdrew my hand from hers. "Your brother and I are strapped for cash these days. Why not bring us into your mansion to enjoy some comfort? Your monthly stipend must have increased considerably. I've arranged a match for your elder brother, this is precisely when money is needed." I smiled calmly. "Mother, I truly have no silver on hand." Silver was indeed scarce, though the emperor had bestowed many valuable items. Mother's expression instantly hardened, her greedy, slanted eyes flashing with malice. "No silver? You're pulling my leg." She reached out and twisted the flesh on my brother's waist. He immediately joined her in threatening me. "If you don't give me silver, I'll go to the palace and accuse you of impersonating me to enlist. We'll all die together if we must." The imperial throne hall was a place of mortal danger, yet not a word of concern escaped their lips. Mother stared at me with pure hatred, her sharp nails digging into my flesh. "If not for Big Brother giving you this chance, how could you ever amount to anything? Now you're clamoring for silver like it's a matter of life and death. I should never have given birth to you, you money-losing good-for-nothing." I remained calm, my tone light. "I never said I wouldn't give it. Don't get ahead of yourselves." I motioned for them to lean closer and whispered a few words. Their faces lit up with joy, convinced. I produced a jade pendant of exceptional quality and instructed them to pawn it. I told them it was worth 300 taels of gold. My mother beamed, though a trace of doubt lingered. She warned me. "Dare to deceive me, and I'll skin you alive when I get back." The mansion gates slowly closed behind them as they dashed excitedly toward the street. They hurried straight to the pawn shop I had named. Not once did they look back at me. I slowly closed my eyes, feeling moisture slide from the corners of my eyes down my cheeks. "Mother and brother, may you walk your path slowly toward the retribution you deserve." The pawnshop mother and brother went to was the princess's private property. The jade pendant I gave them was the very one Xiao Qian had gifted me before returning to the capital. Xiao Qian and the princess now harbored slight discord. He needed an opportunity to convince the princess of his love. People like them are always like this, using innocent souls as stepping stones. Then I would deliver that chance to him myself. I heard that day, the princess and Xiao Qian stood together, watching as my brother's legs were brutally broken. Mother's heart ached unbearably, she wept and cursed viciously. The princess found her noise unbearable, so Xiao Qian ordered men to cut out her tongue. When I found Mother and my brother in the mass grave, they were still clinging to life. Mother trembled as she reached out, clutching the hem of my robe, leaving a bloody handprint. Her severed tongue could make no sound, but I watched her lips move carefully and read the words. "I should have strangled you back then. Even as a ghost, I'll never let you off." I knelt down and slowly pulled the hem from her palm. "Rest assured, Mother. I will save you both. Because death is the only release for you." They climbed over my bones and blood to rise. "Such kin I'd rather never have known. I will make them live. To breed endless suffering and torment." That very night, I spread the news. After all, my mother and brother were crippled, this injustice demanded a proper lawsuit. His Majesty still counted on me to fight for him, he would grant this favor. The next day, the censors jointly petitioned, accusing the princess and Xiao Qian of treating human life as straw. His Majesty flew into a rage, confining the princess to her residence for 3 months. Xiao Qian received 10 strokes of the imperial cane. When I left the city bearing the tiger token, Xiao Qian was assigned to accompany the army. He trailed behind, carried by others, like a lamb led to slaughter. The common folk murmured among themselves. I hear this general is a woman. She's quite handsome, yet retains a martial spirit. Impressive indeed. A toothpick-wielding spectator sneered disdainfully. A woman in the barracks? This is utter chaos. Others spoke with suggestive innuendo. A mere woman, who knows what she used to earn those military merits? A rotten egg smacked the speaker in the face. A vegetable vendor, hands on hips, cursed furiously. You call yourself a man? Instead of serving in the army, you sit here gossiping? Watch me tear your mouth apart today. The butcher slammed his cleaver down on the chopping block. General Shui won so many battles for us. Say another word and I'll cut out your tongues. The men were mobbed and fled in disarray, their faces smeared with vegetable leaves. The blood-inscribed characters carved into Xiao Qian's face by the dagger had nearly healed, thanks to the miraculous medicine the princess had sought out. Yet a terrifying scar remained. Now, the one pointed at and mocked, stripped of all dignity, was him. These past days, some in the army had not respected me. I made an example of them, beating down several troublemakers one by one. No one dared question me again. In my past life, Wanyan Lai said I could shoot an arrow through a willow leaf from 100 paces, that my red-plumed spear was the finest in the army. Those words were no exaggeration. Back then, Xiao Qian also asked, why would a girl like you mingle in military camps? It seemed everyone believed a woman's place was at home, quietly embroidering, gentle and demure, content to marry a man of promise. In my past life, countless faces had commented on my appearance. Now, I am the commander-in-chief of the Great Song, leading 30,000 soldiers under my command. No one in court or the realm dares to speak of my appearance as they did in my past life. For I will not become their wife. I will become their colleague, even their superior. The night we infiltrated Yingzhou, a mutiny erupted within the army. Xiao Qian's former loyalists conspired to seize me, capture the tiger token, and install Xiao Qian as commander. I personally bound the captured conspirators to a high platform and severed their heads. I held the severed heads aloft, blood splattering my face. Disobey military orders, and you shall be beheaded. This act elevated my prestige within the army to new heights. Yet the soldiers sent in pursuit returned empty-handed, allowing Xiao Qian to escape. The following night, deep into the frosty darkness, I had just extinguished the candle. From afar came the howl of cavalry and the clash of blades. Someone shouted, "Trouble! The Jin have launched a night raid." The sounds of slaughter drew nearer with each step. I drew my sword and stepped out into a world of smoke and blood. The Jin forces moved as if through empty land, familiar with every detail of my defenses. My boots stained with blood, I narrowly dodged a hidden arrow and found myself face to face with the Jin commander. It was none other than Wanyan Lai, the man whose eye I had shot out. Seeing I'd evaded, he clicked his tongue regretfully and handed the arrow to Xiao Qian beside him. Ha 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 ha, you come. Let's see who emerges victorious. Xiao Qian drew his bow and nocked an arrow, but didn't aim it at me. He merely stared intently. Xiaorong, you brought only 5,000 troops. Tonight, we have 10,000. You cannot win. I demanded coldly, my voice loud. Did you hand over the defense plans to the Jin? Xiao Qian, are you even human anymore? Wanyan Lai laughed gleefully, reveling in my misfortune. Who else but your emperor brought himself to this state? A mere woman riding him like a horse. Surrender now and beg him to spare you a place as a concubine. Xiao Qian slowly opened his eyes, shielding his dim gaze. Surrender, Xiaorong. I'll overlook everything you did to me before. That year at Whitehead Cliff, when I slit my wrist and fed you my blood, everything then was genuine. If you submit, we can be together forever. Even now, he still believed I harbored some affection for him. I tossed my long sword to the ground and peered into the distance. Ah, what a pity! Xiao Qian closed his eyes. Yes, a pity. Even though you nearly took my life just days ago, today is the day you are destined to fall. I tilted my head and smiled. My apologies. When I said a pity, I meant today is the day you all meet your end. Golden spears and iron horses surged like a tidal wave, battle cries erupting from all sides. Reinforcements descended like divine soldiers, sweeping across the battlefield with overwhelming force. The Jin forces, who had held the advantage moments before, were instantly scattered like dust. I drew my bow and nocked an arrow, aiming directly at the defenseless Wanyanlai. The arrow pierced straight through his throat, knocking him from his horse. Blood gushed from Wanyanlai's throat. Before his last breath, I sneered with contempt. Your archery skills are far inferior to mine. Xiao Qian's face drained of color and disbelief. I leapt onto my horse and charged toward him. Did you think I'd leave myself completely unguarded? The Jin main force has been redeployed, leaving Yingzhou's defenses weakened. This is the perfect moment to strike. How could you possibly think I have 5,000 troops, you fool? Tonight, within the camp, there are only 1,000 soldiers. Xiao Qian retreated step by step under my assault. Hatred made my eyes bloodshot. Something fell softly in the wind and snow, staining the thin layer of fallen snow on the ground a pale red. When the snow ceased, my blade rested against Xiao Qian's throat. His body was riddled with wounds, 7 sword strikes in total. 4 of them severed the tendons in his hands and feet. Neither more nor fewer, exactly the 4 strikes he had inflicted upon me in my past life. Xiao Qian's blood soaked through his front, and he murmured faintly. So it was a diversion. I've lost to you after all. Tonight, I left only 1,000 troops behind. The remaining 4,000 launched a surprise attack on Yingzhou, then joined forces with reinforcements to completely encircle Wanyanlai. Tears streamed endlessly from Xiao Qian's eyes. My birth was lowly. My elder brother beat me daily, forcing me to fight wild dogs for scraps. When I joined the army, noble sons treated me like a dog for their amusement. Back then, I swore I'd rise above it all, that I'd trample those who mocked me, humiliated me, and looked down on me. After becoming a general, I tried to bring my mother out, but she was dead. At this, he burst into a maniacal laugh. She was a concubine, falsely accused by my legitimate mother of adultery, drowned in a pond. My legitimate mother held high status, I could do nothing against her. Until the princess found me. She used her power to avenge me. That's when I realized how alluring power truly is. I'll climb to the top by any means necessary, even if it means losing everyone. I pushed the sword forward silently. Blood trickled down his neck. What does any of this have to do with me? Xiao Qian tilted his head back, staring at me with a vacant gaze. That year on the snowy mountain, you raced 1,000 miles to save me. You have no idea how ecstatic I was when I discovered you were a woman. Nor do you know that jade pendant was the only memento my mother left me. I never loved the princess, but I had no choice in any of this. I knew you hated your mother and brother, and wanted to use my hand to eliminate them. So I did it. Xiaorong, I never had your luck. After too many defeats, doubt crept in. I needed another shortcut to greatness. I had no choice. In the next instant, I thrust my blade through his chest. He choked back a groan, the words dying in his throat. I grimaced in disgust. Enough. Every word you speak sickens me. And now you still believe your defeats were merely bad luck? Let me tell you this, while you drowned your frustrations in drink, I burned the midnight oil studying military texts. While you lay in a drunken stupor, I rose at cockcrow to train. While your stubborn arrogance trapped you in enemy lines, I spent sleepless nights plotting your rescue. Your defeat was entirely your own doing, from start to finish. He closed his eyes calmly, a faint smile playing on his lips. Very well. Dying by your hand isn't so bad. I sheathed my sword and clamped my thumb and forefinger tightly around his jaw. Die by my hand? How could I grant you such satisfaction when I despise you so? He was stuffed into a sack, limbs bound. Desperate screams pierced my ears as he begged for a swift end. I waved my hand coldly. This is your fate. Accept it. He was cast to his rightful place. Wanyan Liutsua trusted Xiao Qian, leading to the annihilation of 10,000 Jin troops. The Jin hated him even more than I did. The Song dynasty had no use for such a traitor, but the gene did. The next day, a body, tortured beyond recognition, was hung from the gates of Yuzhou. The jin's peace talks were merely a delaying tactic. In my previous life, I met a gruesome end in a sheep pen. Days later, my bones would surely meet the same fate at the hands of the jin. Xiao Qian, what you owed me is finally repaid. When I led the Song's iron cavalry to breach the city gates, I looked up and saw that head. On that face were the words I carved with my own hands. Blood-soaked, the head bore a pair of startled, crimson eyes. A look of death that refused to close its eyes. Very well, Xiao Qian. Then keep your eyes open. Watch how I take Yuzhou. Watch how I properly reclaim the old lands. Only one person remains for my vengeance. And you, princess. Confining the princess for 3 months before departure was the first step of the plan. 3 months later, when she emerges, she will find the world has changed. During her confinement, I led my forces to seize Yingzhou and breach Yuzhou, all to rescue one person. The prince sent as a hostage to the great Jin 7 years ago. The princess's younger half-brother, Li Huayu. By what means he survived in Jin hands, amidst such tense relations between the two courts, remains unknown. Perhaps that is another tale of miracles. In my past life, when I was driven to the frontier in ragged clothes during the bitterest winter, I once passed by a nobleman riding in his carriage. A servant approached, holding a large cloak. My master took pity on this wretched woman. I beg your leniency. The jailer thus permitted me to don the cloak, concealing my wretched state. In my life of utter abandonment, the final destination saw a stranger I'd never met bestow dignity upon me through a garment. That cloak bore auspicious clouds embroidered in gold thread, while its lining held a name, Li Huayu. 7 years prior, the Jin dynasty had demanded a Song princess for a political marriage. His Majesty, doting on his legitimate princess, refused on the grounds of her youth. Instead, he sent a son born to a concubine, younger than the princess herself, to the Jin as a hostage. The day I crossed the frontier in my past life was the very day he returned to the capital. Li Huayu's birth mother, unloved, died mysteriously when he was still a child. Such a powerless individual had somehow survived unscathed in the Jin court for 7 years. His Majesty seemed to have forgotten this man, leaving him to fend for himself and the enemy nation. I believe the emperor's profound favor toward the empress, coupled with her bearing only one princess over many years, made Li Huaiju the key to breaking the stalemate for my revenge. After seizing Yuzhou, I sought out Li Huaiju immediately. He was slender, his eyes serene and unassuming, yet they seemed to hold profound wisdom. To my surprise, he did not immediately set off for the capital. Instead, he reported to the emperor and fought alongside me on the front lines. The emperor had few heirs. Among his children, only the princess and Li Huaiju were of a certain age. He decided to grant Li Huaiju this opportunity for experience. On the day the princess was to be released from her confinement, the streets were filled with jubilant news of my conquests of Yingzhou and Yuzhou. The capital's citizens cheered and ran to share the glad tidings. It was amidst this festive uproar that she learned of Xiao Qian's death. She immediately coughed up blood and fainted. Upon waking, she frantically tore herself free from the guards, drew her sword, and sought to slay passers-by. What are you celebrating? My Xiao Lang is dead, yet you revel in joy. Why? Why? Scum! I'll slaughter every last one of you lowly rabble. The crowd scattered in panic. Though the emperor sought to suppress the incident for his beloved daughter, many had witnessed her state that day. Whispers spread throughout the capital, tarnishing the princess's image beyond redemption. She was gradually losing the most crucial asset for any ruler, the people's hearts. And this very thing could only be granted by those she called rabble. Even from 1,000 miles away, I could sense the princess's power beginning to wane. As the 3-year term drew near, I had captured 5 of the 6 northern states of Ji. The Jin forces were being gradually driven back to the northern frontier. My achievements had overshadowed the sovereign, and his majesty could no longer sit idly by. The princess was even more impatient than the emperor. Between her and me lay the hatred of a past life, and in this life, the life of Xiao Qian. Especially since Li Huayu, who posed a threat to her, was still with me. Spring grasses turned green once more. The emperor, afflicted by a long-standing illness, could no longer attend to state affairs. He personally conferred upon the princess the title of Princess of the State, entrusting her to handle governmental matters. The princess issued 12 golden edicts summoning me back. I knew returning to the capital meant certain death. A poisoned cup in prison, a white silk rope in the inner palace, or perhaps an ambush along the journey back, any of these could easily end me. Li Huayu came to see me. As a woman, your path is always more arduous. Even with your exceptional talents and countless achievements, in their eyes you remain merely a woman, destined to remain beneath them. The world itself is unjust. Where there is injustice, we must fight with all our might. At this juncture, do you truly wish to resign yourself to fate? I smiled and offered her the freshly brewed tea in my hand. Your Highness speaks the very thoughts in my heart. I am willing to fight alongside you. If we fail, I shall have no regrets. The next day, the court and the realm were shaken. Li Huayu issued a proclamation detailing the princess's crimes, accusing her of secretly lacing the imperial cuisine with cinnabar, causing the emperor to languish in illness. He and I would lead our armies back to the capital to rescue the sovereign. The princess flew into a rage, flinging the proclamation aside. She dispatched troops northward to meet us, while the Jin dynasty also prepared to counterattack. Our situation grew perilous. One misstep could leave us caught between two enemies, facing total annihilation. Yet misfortune struck. The generals she sent were nothing but drunken fools, utterly incapable of resistance. Years of warfare had forged my seasoned troops into an elite force. The princess's harsh rule since taking power had left the people suffering terribly. She indulged in luxury, using the people's tax money to lavishly expand the palace, leaving the army short on provisions. Amidst her foolish actions, our forces gradually grew stronger. Within half a year, Li Huayu and I would be at the city gates. Panicked, the princess dispatched troops from the capital region, using civilians as human shields to block the city gates, attempting to halt the assault. Archer units were deployed along the ramparts, vowing to defend the city to the death. I found myself gradually losing ground. As the standoff intensified, a faint murmur rose from the crowd. The third prince and General Shui drove the Jin invaders from our land. They did not deserve such a fate. The voices grew louder. The princess's tyranny is like a ravenous tiger. Does such a ruler truly deserve to govern the realm? Even if we die here today, we must let them enter the city. Some began shouting to open the gates, pushing forward. Then a second, a third. Some of the capital's garrison soldiers dropped their swords and joined the crowd. The leading officer bellowed, "Whoever dares advance shall be slain on the spot." In the next instant, he was cut down from his horse by a soldier behind him. Almost everyone discarded their weapons, their cries shaking the heavens, "Open the gates! Let General Shui in!" Upon the high platform, the princess drew her command flag and roared, "Scum! Kill these scum!" I drew my bow and arrow, piercing the wrist clutching her command flag. She screamed in agony, swept away by the crowd as she fled. The city gates swung open. I charged straight through. Li Huayu, meanwhile, circled to the north gate, leading his troops to encircle the capital. Now the imperial palace lay before us like prey in a net. Catching turtles in a jar, the princess and the emperor were the very turtles we sought. The princess had disguised herself in palace maid's clothing, preparing to flee. But with her hair in disarray, she was brought before me. Even then, she screamed wildly, "I am the princess of the realm, personally appointed by His Majesty. How dare you, traitor, lay a hand on me?" Her shrill voice pierced my ears. It grated on my nerves beyond endurance. So I had her mouth stuffed full of horse dung. Then, grabbing her hair, I dragged her step by step into the hall where the emperor rested. Li Huaiju stood silently before the bed, clad in full armor. Upon the bed lay his father, the emperor. After years apart, His Majesty had aged considerably. He turned his face to gaze at the three of us. Seeing the princess's pitiful state, a flicker of pain crossed his features. "Huayu, I may pass the throne to you." Amid the princess's frantic shrieks, the emperor coughed several times, coughing up blood. "But I have two conditions. The first, treat your elder sister well. As for the second..." The emperor's gloomy gaze shifted to my face, filled with venomous resentment born of betrayal. He struggled to sit up, pointing at me with great effort. This woman must not be spared. She disrupts the court, a hen crowing at dawn, a veritable scourge. Li Huaiyu remained silent, as if weighing his words. Despair flickered in the princess's eyes, then gave way to wild elation. But Li Huaiyu laughed, a clear, ringing laugh. He extended a finger, effortlessly pressing the emperor back onto the bed, and murmured softly. Father, on what basis do you assume I would agree to these two conditions? He removed the jade hairpin from his head, and cascading locks of hair fell free. My dear father, you truly are pitiful. Even now, you don't know whether I'm male or female. The emperor's eyes widened in shock. Phlegm caught in his throat, causing him to choke and gasp. For a moment, he couldn't utter a word. Li Huaiyu smiled. You favored the empress above all, but she was jealous. Mother feared I'd bring trouble, so at birth, she declared me a male child. From infancy, she raised me as a boy. Thanks to your Majesty's indifference, this secret remained hidden until today. The princess collapsed, clutching her head and screaming that this couldn't be true. I lifted the princess to the bedside. Li Huaiyu held the jade hairpin before her eyes. Do you remember this pin? The princess's eyes widened in terror as she shook her head frantically. She pressed the tip of the pin against the princess's face. This hairpin. It was the very thing you and your mother used to frame my mother. Your claim that you saw her steal it led the empress to torture her. When I found her, her hands had been broken, and she was drowned in a well. Her body was already rotting. Li Huaiyu pressed down hard, driving the pin into the princess's mouth. It pierced her loathsome tongue. She turned her head and smiled at the emperor. Rest assured, I'll send your beloved daughter down to keep you company. The emperor gasped hoarsely. Wicked creature! With his last ounce of strength, he managed only this curse. Then he coughed up a mouthful of blood, his eyes rolled back, and he breathed his last. Li Huaiyu handed his sword to me, his gaze fixed on the princess writhing on the floor. Xiao, as we agreed, she is yours to deal with. My legs felt weak as I stepped outside the hall, sunlight washing over me. Blood splattered the front of my robe. It had spattered there after I slit the princess's throat. The emperor had few heirs, the remaining 2 daughters and 1 son were mere children. Before Li Huaiyu ascended the throne, he personally appointed me as the Grand General of the nation. Some could no longer contain themselves. The very next day, dozens of court officials petitioned. They claimed rumors swirled throughout the capital that I, disguised as a man, had seduced the new emperor and disrupted court order. I deserved to be expelled from the court. Li Huaiyu sat above in his court robes, pondering for a long moment before smiling at me. The general of the nation, a title beyond compare. What do you say? I cleaved the table in 2 with a single sword strike. Bullshit! Who started this? Li Huaiyu's expression darkened. I shall be the first empress of this dynasty. If such absurd rumors reach my ears again, you'll pay with your heads. With the new emperor setting such an example, no one dared to speak of my disguise as a man. After the empress ascended the throne, she enacted new policies. Women could now establish their own households, acquire property, and engage in commerce. They could also attend schools to study and write, just like men. Later, the dynasty even saw its first female top scholar. The empress established embroidery workshops in the Jiangnan region. She gathered many homeless women, teaching them to weave cloth and trade silk. When the empress and I traveled incognito through Jiangnan, we passed a farmstead. A couple cradled a newborn baby girl. An old woman passing by couldn't resist commenting. Ah, a new daughter. She'll likely face hardship in the future. The wife smiled and pointed toward the capital. Our new emperor is a woman. General Shui, who reclaimed the 6 states of northern Ji, is also a woman. Her husband chuckled in agreement. Life will only get better from here on out. The empress and I exchanged a knowing smile. Midway through our journey, I lifted the curtain. It was the spring of the 8th year of Changxi. Beyond the curtain, spring splendor unfolded, washing away all somber memories. At last, I saw it. The sky bright with daylight, the underground river ever flowing. The story ends here. Thank you all for your companionship. See you in the next chapter.